I'm Nelson Harris, and on this edition of Roanoke Valley Then and Now, we'll focus on the history of Poage Mill and Back Creek. I'm standing along the bank of Back Creek, which created quite a community here in southwest Roanoke County. Very close to where we're located was the grist mill of Elijah Poage. Poage erected his mill in the early 1840s, and he operated it until his death in 1900. It became a center for a community that ultimately became known as Poage Mill. And close by the mill was the Poage store, where the orchardists and farmers would bring their produce to sell and to be picked up and carried to other places. Elijah Poage not only was a miller and a storekeeper, but he was also a cabinet maker. And much of his furniture still remains in the homes here in the Back Creek section of Roanoke County. And in fact, because he was a cabinet maker, he also made coffins, which made him the local undertaker for this section of the county during his lifetime. And it's estimated that he oversaw the burials of some 2,000 people here in southwest Roanoke County. In the Poage Mill section was also the country store of Luther Bell, which housed the telephone exchange as well as the post office. As the community grew here in the Back Creek Poage Mill section of Roanoke County, the county built what became known as Back Creek High School. And that school served the county well into the 1930s, at which time it became a doctor's clinic, and Dr. Turner would often hold residence here at that clinic. The Back Creek High School closed, and ultimately students went to Andrew Lewis High School over in Salem. But replacing the wood frame schoolhouses, of which there were many in this section, became Back Creek Elementary School, a brick schoolhouse that's still in operation along Route 221 today. The state highway, Route 221, came into existence in the 1930s when the citizens of this section of the county petitioned local and state officials for a better road system. The highway was actually constructed using convict labor, and many of the older residents of this section of town remember that highway being created and the convicts that created it and the convict camps that were set up out here to house the laborers during that particular period of time. The Back Creek section, much like the Vinton Mountain section, was populated by a number of large apple orchards that were here in the area and that continued to operate well into the era of World War II. In the 1950s and 60s, the orchards gave way to subdivisions and residential development that are now a part of the landscape here in the Back Creek section. The Poage Farm existed along Route 221 for decades, farmed by the Poage family, and in fact it was the last operating dairy farm in Roanoke County when it ceased operations in the 1960s and early 1970s. One of the key developments that contributed to the growth of the Back Creek section was when electricity came to this section of Roanoke County in the 1930s as the result of a federal rural electrification program that came out of the Depression era. And in fact, there is a family on Vinton Mountain that kept a notebook of that project, and the lights went on in Back Creek and Vinton Mountain in 1937. Today, Back Creek does not resemble the Back Creek section of 100 years ago, as it is one of the most populated and developed residentially sections of Roanoke County. Thank you for watching this edition of Roanoke Valley Then and Now. We'll see you next time.